Hey guys, welcome to the channel. Today, I bring you an emotional and transformative story. The account of a near-death experience that completely changed Verity Abernathy's life. Prepare yourself for a journey between science and the divine, where faith, redemption, and purpose meet in a surprising way. But before we start, comment here which city you're watching from and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any more incredible stories like this. Now, without further ado, let's dive into this impressive story. I'm Verity Abernathy, and my story begins long before that fateful day in Atlanta. I grew up in a family where love and faith were fundamental pillars. I vividly remember sunny afternoons when my mother would tell me Bible stories in a soft voice full of conviction. These stories, although full of miracles and teachings, were always presented in such a natural way that, in my innocence, they did not raise deep questions. However, as I grew older, my logical nature and passion for science began to occupy my heart. During biology and chemistry classes in college, the precision of experiments and the beauty of scientific methods enchanted me irresistibly. I found myself immersed in formulas and theories, finding solace in the clarity of the data and the accuracy of the results. The truth is, in numbers and repeating experiments, I used to repeat to myself, hoping that reason could somehow fill in the gaps of existence. Despite this unshakable faith in science, a part of me always retained a feeling of nostalgia for those stories I heard as a child. In some lonely moments, as I reviewed scientific concepts, an inner voice reminded me of the comfort found in a simple "Amen" or a warm hug from a loved one at church. However, as the years passed, that voice became fainter. He attended church, sporadically, almost as a ritualistic habit for times of distress, but he never found the same fervor that he once knew. Once, after a particularly challenging class, I found myself talking to a classmate, Elizabeth, in the university cafeteria. "Verity, why don't you ever talk about how you feel, especially when it comes to faith?" she asked, with a curious look. I answered hesitantly, "I believe in science, Elizabeth. Everything I know can be explained. But sometimes I miss that comfort that faith brought. But I don't know if I can reconnect with that." This conversation, although brief, left a mark. It wasn't just a discussion about beliefs, but a deep reflection on the duality that was established within me. My mornings were filled with long runs around the neighborhood, where the city awoke to the gentle murmur of life. As my feet tapped rhythmically on the sidewalk, I thought about the countless scientific theories that explained movement and energy, but also about the mystery of destiny and existence. These races became my moment of introspection, a space where logic and feeling met, even if in a subtle way. In my small Atlanta apartment, the shelves were filled with science books, biographies of great thinkers, and, surprisingly, a few copies of spiritual literature. It was as if I was divided between two worlds, the exact and the intangible, the tangible and the mysterious. Often, at the end of the day, I would find myself debating internally whether the miracles were merely statistical coincidences or whether there really was something beyond what the eye could see. It was in this scenario of uncertainty and convictions that my journey began to unfold. I knew that although my faith had become a faint presence in my life, there was something inexplicable that had always caught my attention. And unbeknownst to me, this feeling would be the prelude to an experience that would completely transform my perception of life and death. That morning seemed promising, like all the others. The fresh air of Atlanta, with its light touch of spring, invited me to face the morning run with determination and lightness. I, Verity Abernathy, put on my sneakers and adjusted the heart rate monitoring band, immersed in thoughts about the challenges of the day ahead. However, I never imagined that, in just a few moments, everything would change. As I ran through the Centennial Olympic Park, the sun began to rise above the horizon, dyeing the sky with shades of orange and pink. The steady rhythm of my heart, which I had so trusted in scientific analysis and measurements, suddenly seemed to defy all laws of physics. That's when I felt a sharp pain in my chest, an intense, overwhelming feeling, as if something inside me was breaking apart. My body, once full of energy, stopped abruptly. I clearly remember a muffled scream, perhaps the echo of my own despair. But in the midst of the pain, an almost supernatural calm came over me. Before I could comprehend what was happening, everything around me became an indistinct fog. In an instant of clarity, I felt myself floating, free from the bonds of my body. I was there, outside of myself, watching with a strange tranquility as the scene unfolded below. The paramedics, with their tense faces and precise movements, rushed to the scene, working a frantic choreography to bring me back. "Verity, we need an answer." "Keep your eyes open, please," I heard one of the technicians shouting, but the words became distant, as if they belonged to another world. I was there, witnessing my own fragility and simultaneously experiencing unparalleled peace. The chaos of the scene didn't cause me fear, just a serene acceptance, as if I were being called to a destiny that had already been mapped out. As the paramedics used defibrillators and called for help, something extraordinary began to form in my consciousness. My memories, the theories that I always sought to explain the functioning of the universe, were mixed with feelings and images that could never be deciphered by calculations or measurements. I saw flashes of my childhood, the smiling faces of my parents, and even those little failures of faith that bothered me so much. But most of all, I felt a comforting presence that seemed to say that, despite the apparent end, something greater was coming. All around me, time seemed to slow down. The sounds, the beeping of the heart monitor, the anxious murmurs of the paramedics, turned into a distant harmonic symphony, gently lulling me. In the midst of this altered reality, a soft voice, without face or form, whispered words of comfort and hope, reaffirming that suffering was giving way to a new dimension of existence. I couldn't fully understand what was happening, but I knew, with the conviction that only the experience of the limit can offer, that this was not the end. It was a transition, a portal into something so vast and mysterious that human logic could never fully encompass. And even as efforts to revive my body continued with urgency, I was already leaving the known world behind, floating toward a destination where pain would turn to light. As I left the chaos of the scene behind, I felt my consciousness being drawn by an irresistible force toward an entirely unknown experience. When I let go of my body, I realized that I was not alone. A vibrant energy surrounded me, guiding me to a new level of existence. I clearly remember the first glimpse of that intense light that appeared on the horizon of my vision, a luminosity that did not dazzle, but welcomed, as if each beam were a loving touch from a loved one. The light, alive and pulsating, seemed to have a life of its own. She was not just a static glow, but a subtle invitation to move forward. "Come, Verity," he seemed to whisper, not with words, but with deep sensations that echoed in the core of my being. Guided by this presence, I began to realize that the light formed the entrance to a tunnel, not dark or threatening, but full of vibrant colors and nuances that I had never imagined. The tunnel pulsed, as if it were breathing, and with each movement, it aroused emotions that went far beyond rational understanding. Inside this bright corridor, the feeling of time and space became relative. I found myself floating in an environment where the laws of physics seemed to fall apart, and each color, each sound, was capable of transforming my perceptions. As he progressed, a soft, enveloping melody filled the room, not music in the conventional sense, but a harmony that touched the soul and awakened forgotten memories of childhood and unconditional love. Amid this spectacle of sensations, my mind tried to find words to describe the indescribable, but everything seemed to transcend the power of language. At one of the moments when the tunnel seemed to widen, I heard a voice, as ethereal as the surrounding environment. "Do not be afraid, Verity. What you see is the manifestation of love that transcends material existence." The voice was comforting and carried an ancient wisdom, as if all experiences of faith, doubt, and reason had culminated in that moment. It was not a person's voice, but the living expression of the universe communicating directly to me. As I walked through this tunnel, the presence of light and color completely enveloped me, and I was able to notice details that would normally go unnoticed. Every nuance of deep purple, the subtle gold of the edges of each beam, and the unique way the melody seemed to synchronize with the beat of my heart. Even when that beat became just a distant memory, there was a sense of belonging, of being exactly where I was supposed to be, and the restlessness that had always accompanied me during moments of doubt began to dissipate. I understand now, I thought, as the intensity of the moment intensified, filling me with a peace and clarity I had never experienced. The tunnel was not just a path, but a living metaphor for the inner journey, where each step brought me closer to the essence of life and universal love. There, at the convergence between science and the divine, all my convictions were challenged, revealing a reality where the impossible becomes palpable and existence is redefined. The experience inside the tunnel was so transformative that, even after waking up, every thought and sensation still echoed within me, as if the memory of that sacred place remained eternally engraved in my soul. As I emerged from the vibrant tunnel, I was enveloped by a vision that seemed to transcend all limits of imagination. A celestial garden of ineffable beauty unfolded before my eyes. The environment exuded a peace that I had never experienced, with colors that were not limited to familiar tones, but blended together to create a setting worthy of divine tales. Each flower petal radiated an inner light, as if the garden itself was made of pure life energy. I walked slowly along a path of shining stones, feeling the soft touch of dew that, instead of wetting, caressed my skin with a comforting warmth. The fragrances emanating from the flowers were so intense and full of life that each breath felt like an elixir of pure joy. It was at that moment that I saw a familiar figure, who seemed to have been carved from the very essence of love. My beloved grandmother, Margaret Maggie Abernathy. "Verity, my sweet granddaughter," she said in a soft, enveloping voice that mixed the tenderness of ancient memories with the wisdom of eternal times. "Grandmother," I replied, surprised and excited as I approached, almost in a state of reverence. "Yes, my beloved. I have always been here, waiting to guide you," she replied, reaching out her arms to envelop me in a warm hug that seemed to warm every cell of my being. As we hugged, I felt a wave of unconditional love that dispelled all the doubts and fears that, even for a moment, still resided in my mind. My grandmother led me along a path lined with trees whose leaves sparkled with an almost palpable energy, as if each one told a story of overcoming and redemption. In each corner of the garden, there were small corners where crystal-clear water, fountains murmured ancient secrets, composing a symphony of tranquility. "Verity, this place is a reflection of all the souls who have chosen to live with love and faith," Maggie explained as we walked together. "Each flower, each shine, carries the essence of those who left their mark on the world, and here they bloom in eternity." His voice was a balm for my spirit, and I felt that even in the distance between life and death, the bond that unites souls is unbreakable. Beside the path, I saw small statues of angels, not imposing but delicate, that seemed to murmur words of encouragement to the visitors of that sanctuary. The garden revealed itself not only as a place of rest, but also as a space of deep reconciliation, where the loves and pains of the past found a new form of existence. "My granddaughter," Maggie continued as we stopped in front of a sparkling fountain, "this garden is a reminder that the beauty of life manifests itself in every moment, even those that seem marked by pain. Each of us has a mission, and even those who are gone before finishing their journey here have a chance to find redemption and peace." As I listened to his words, tears of gratitude ran down my face, not from sadness, but from indescribable joy. The atmosphere seemed to whisper that although the laws of physics could explain the tangible world, there was another dimension, where love and hope were the only forces that truly mattered. In this garden, death was not the end, but the transition to a state of being where each soul is embraced by light. Upon leaving the enchantment of the celestial garden, I was led along a soft path of light that took me to a unique area. The zone of peace and rest. This space was a clear representation of the tranquility that only souls full of kindness and faith could achieve. The environment was immersed in an almost palpable calm, where time seemed to dissolve into a serene eternity. Upon entering this area, I saw a vast field covered in iridescent green grass, where each leaf glowed with a soft energy. Small streams meandered through the land, making music with their constant murmur. I felt welcomed, as if every sound, every color, and every aroma had been prepared to comfort the most tired hearts. It was the ideal place for rest and renewal. As I walked, slowly I came across a group of souls sitting in circles in perfect harmony. Among them, a lady with a serene look and a calm smile caught my attention. Approaching, I heard his low, welcoming voice. "Welcome, Verity. Here, every soul found a place to heal and rest. Feel at home, because in this space, peace reigns." That welcome was genuine and profound. I sat next to that lady, who introduced herself as Eleanor. We talked for a few moments, and she shared that she had gone through intense moments of pain and regret, but that here, among souls who helped each other, she had found relief. His words, full of wisdom, made me realize that suffering became a bridge to transformation if we knew how to welcome it with love and compassion. Around, other conversations were taking place in a soft, almost musical tone. A young man with eyes that shone with hope spoke about his life experiences with surprising tranquility, while an elderly woman told stories of overcoming, where each tear had turned into a lesson in resilience. The voices blended in a harmony that seemed to echo the song of the universe. "Here," said another soul, who approached and introduced herself as Margaret. "Each of us carries a burden that has been lightened by love and faith. In our darkest moments, we find the strength to rise again. And in this space, the energy of forgiveness and understanding surrounds us, allowing true peace to manifest." The environment was dotted with details that inspired a feeling of complete serenity. Delicately colored birds flew gently, and butterflies danced in the wind, like messengers of hope. Every breath I took there was filled with an intoxicating scent of jasmine and lavender, reinforcing the idea that, regardless of the challenges faced in life, there was always a refuge where the soul could rest. As I allowed myself to be absorbed by the tranquility of that place, I felt that the weight of past choices and pain began to dissipate. It was as if the pure energy of compassion circulated around me, inviting me to leave behind all the ties that bound me to suffering. The silence of that area, broken only by the soft murmurs of the streams and serene conversations, was an ode to eternal peace. There, in that sacred corner, I was able to understand that the true essence of life was revealed not only in struggles and challenges, but also in moments of pure rest, where the soul finds its renewal and forgiveness becomes an inexhaustible source of love. After leaving the zone of peace and rest, I was guided along a trail of light that seemed to invite me into a space where emotions, regrets, and lessons intertwined in a delicate dance of redemption. Upon entering this new environment, the atmosphere was transformed. The scene acquired a more introspective tone, where every detail seemed to carry the weight and beauty of the stories lived. This was the zone of learning and reflection, a place where souls not only rested, but found the opportunity to heal, to forgive themselves, and to understand the wounds left by earthly existence. Right from the start, I came across a familiar figure, Samantha Green, a dear friend who had left too soon, but whose essence remained vibrant in that space. Her eyes, filled with a serene melancholy, met mine and, with a soft smile, she greeted me. "Verity, it's so good to see you here. I always knew I would need this moment to reflect on so many things that remained unsaid, unhealed." As we walked together along a path lined with trees whose leaves sparkled with a faint light, Samantha began to share her journey of regrets and discoveries. His voice, low and full of emotion, resonated in the air like a melody that seemed to echo the truths that many avoid facing. "During my life I have carried a huge burden, Verity. There was so much guilt, so many unspoken words, that my heart was constantly clenching. Here in this space of reflection, the angels are at our side, helping us to see that forgiveness, both what we give and what we receive, is the key to freedom," she said, while her eyes shone with contained tears, but also with the hope of a fresh start. Along the way, other souls joined us, each with their own unique story of pain and learning. A young woman named Lily enthusiastically shared a life-changing experience, how angels had guided her steps after a series of mistakes that nearly destroyed her. She mentioned that every challenge she faced was now seen as a divine lesson, an opportunity to grow and evolve spiritually. The dialogue between us was dynamic and full of empathy, as if every word spoken served to soften the invisible scars of the past. As we walked, the angels approached silently, their presence marked by an aura of light that caressed the soul. In a moment of pause, an angel with a soft voice spoke. "Every lesson learned on this journey is a gift. You who carry so much weight in your hearts can free yourself by accepting that forgiveness, for yourself or others, is the path to healing." These words penetrated deeply, echoing in the quietest corners of my being. The atmosphere was one of palpable sincerity, where each soul allowed themselves to reflect on their mistakes and successes, on moments of weakness and achievements of courage. Samantha and I stopped in front of a serene lake, where the surface reflected not only the sky, but also the feelings that resided there. It was there that, with discreet tears, Samantha confessed, "I forgave myself today, Verity. And with that forgiveness, I feel like I can finally move on to the next stage of my existence, unburdened by past regrets." The depth of that moment brought us even closer together, and as the setting sun began to color the horizon with warm tones, every soul present seemed to find a little light in the water's reflection. The learning and reflection zone was, therefore, more than a mere space. It was a sanctuary where mistakes turned into lessons and pain into wisdom. Every step we took there taught me that, even after leaving this world, there is always the possibility of a fresh start and inner growth. The conversations followed one another with a smooth cadence, full of stories, advice, and the transformative power of self-knowledge. The environment pulsed with the certainty that learning was a continuous path, where each soul could finally find redemption through a deep understanding of themselves. After the comforting intensity of the learning and reflection zone, I was led to an area that contrasted with all the light and serenity I had experienced so far. As I approached, the atmosphere began to acquire a denser tone, an environment full of memories and choices that, although painful, sought a form of redemption. This was the dark zone, a space where souls who lived selfishly or made decisions that brought suffering met to face the weight of their own actions. Upon entering this territory, my eyes came across a scenery that seemed sculpted in shades of gray and shadows. The vibrant colors had faded, giving way to a palette of soft, melancholy hues, where the light struggled to penetrate the dense clouds. I could feel the tension in the air, a heart-pounding sense of regret that also held the promise of possible transformation. I walked slowly along an uneven trail, where the steps seemed to echo the murmur of the souls that lived there. It was then that I spotted Darius Brown, my distant cousin, whose presence was both disturbing and moving. He was sitting on a stone bench, his hunched posture and lost gaze reflecting the torment of a past marked by struggles with addictions, and disastrous choices. "Darius?" I called in a soft voice, almost afraid of breaking the heavy silence of that place. He lifted his head, and for a brief moment, I could see the pain and confusion in his eyes. "Verity," he replied with a hoarse tone, as if each word cost an immense internal battle. I'm trying to find myself again. This place is a mirror for everything I tried to forget." We sat together for a long time, in a silence that spoke louder than words. Little by little, other faces began to emerge from the shadows, each representing a story of painful choices. A man with scars both visible and invisible muttered to himself about the mistakes he had made, while a woman with a haggard look tried, with suppressed tears, to convince herself that there was still hope. "Here, in this space," said an angel whose presence was felt without needing to be seen, but who transmitted his message directly to the afflicted hearts. "Each of you has the chance to face your own shadows. Repentance is not a condemnation, but the first step towards redemption. Allow yourself to feel, recognize, and ultimately transform this pain into learning." Darius, his voice breaking, continued. "For so long I tried to run away from myself, but here I feel the weight of every decision, every mistake, and at the same time I realize that maybe this pain is what pushes me to change." I held his hand, feeling an unexpected warmth amidst the cold of that environment. "You're not alone, Darius. Each of us, even in our darkest moments, has the ability to rise again. This place is just a reflection of the choices we made, but it can also be the turning point for a new beginning." As we spoke, the dark zone revealed small details that indicated the presence of compassion, even in the midst of darkness. Little lights appeared among the shadows, as if silent angels were there to offer respite from the pain. One of the souls, with a choked and sincere voice, commented, "I always thought this place would be a dead end, but now I see that it is an invitation to look within, to face what we try to hide." His words resonated with me, reinforcing the idea that, even in the deepest darkness, there is always a spark of light, ready to ignite the path to redemption. As I said goodbye to Darius and the others who were gathered there, I felt that each one carried not only the weight of the past, but also the subtle promise of a better future, where the recognition of mistakes could, finally, open the door to transformation. Amid the transition of zones, while the shadows were still fading and the lights began to intensify, I felt a shiver run through my body. Not from the cold, but from an inexplicable expectation. It was then that softly and unmistakably a presence revealed itself before me, transforming the environment into something that surpassed human understanding. The figure that emerged, enveloped in a radiant aura, exuded a peace that transcended any emotion I had ever felt. His countenance was serene, and at the same time filled with a caring authority, as if every feature of his face held the accumulated wisdom of millennia. Without the need for major formalities, his voice echoed, and each word seemed to vibrate in sync with the beat of the universe. "Verity, my daughter," he said, with a voice that mixed the tenderness of maternal affection with the depth of an eternal truth. "The time has come to understand that the love we offer each other has the power to transform even the deepest shadows into light." As I spoke, my eyes filled with tears. I felt in every word confirmation that I was not alone on my journey. Jesus' presence was a balm, a reminder that redemption and compassion were always found, even in the most critical moments of existence. Approaching with silent steps, he reached out and lightly touched my shoulder, a gesture that said, "I am here and I will always be." "I know the anguish and doubts that accompanied you, Verity," he continued, while his gaze penetrated my being. "Every tear, every mistake, and every act of kindness you have done has eternal meaning. what you have experienced on this plane is just one part of a larger story in which love and mercy intertwine to guide us back to the light. I, still astonished by that presence that seemed to condense all the love in the universe, tried to find words. But words failed me given the grandeur of that moment. Instead, I allowed myself to just feel, taking in every nuance of that encounter. I felt a comforting warmth spread throughout my body, as if all the scars and burdens of the past were slowly melting away. "Look at the earth, Verity," instructed Jesus, pointing to the space where, from above, our planet could be seen. "See how each soul shines in its own way. There are those who, with their gestures of love and compassion, radiate an intense light. But there are also souls who, wrapped in their own fears and selfishness, seem erased. Every choice we make, no matter how small it may seem, has an eternal impact." As I watched that vision, I felt as if the teachings of my life, both in science and faith, were finally converging to a point of clarity. The image of Earth, dotted with millions of stories, served as a mirror for our own challenges and hopes. Jesus leaned a little closer, and with a serene smile added, "No soul is lost, Verity. Everyone has the opportunity to transform, redeem themselves and unite with infinite love." The message I carry is simple but powerful. Love, forgive, and transform. Because eternity is not just a destination, it is the sum of the choices we make while we live. His words, filled with palpable truth, echoed in my heart in a deep and irrevocable way. It was at that moment that I understood that the encounter with him was not an end, but the beginning of a new mission. A mission to share the love and hope that transcend all barriers. As the encounter with Jesus faded into an aura of light and serenity, I felt a new calling emerge in my heart. The feeling was overwhelming, a mixture of mission and urgency that seemed to vibrate in every cell of my being. At that moment, I understood that the experience I had lived had transcended the mere threshold between life and death. I had been chosen for a mission, a task to share the message that every act of love and forgiveness has an eternal impact. Jesus, with a tender look and serene authority, spoke again while his presence illuminated every corner of my soul. "Verity, your journey doesn't end here. You must return to Earth so that your experience may serve as a beacon of hope for those who still seek the light." His words resonated with a clarity that defied reason. Although I was still immersed in the feeling of peace, the call to return awakened in me a mixture of reluctance and responsibility. However, the conviction that I was carrying an indispensable message drove me to accept the mission. Amid the calm of this new state, I began to remember the faces and stories of those who remained on Earth, my students, friends, and even strangers who crossed my path, each with their own struggles and pains. As Jesus spoke, a soft voice echoed in the distance, as if time itself was unfolding to remind me of the impermanence of existence. "Verity, don't get attached to the comfort of this plan. Your presence here was brief. There is a pulsating life out there, full of challenges and opportunities to love and transform." Confused but determined, I asked, "But how can I share something so grand without seeming fanciful?" "With the simplicity of love, Verity," Jesus replied. "The truth reveals itself in the heart of each person, and you will be the messenger who shows that eternity is built with each choice of compassion." I remember feeling a rush of heat and energy course through my body. The sensation was as if a veil was lifting, revealing an intimate connection between the divine and the human. Suddenly, the environment around me began to transform. The colors intensified. The melody became a distant echo, and the contours of the celestial garden began to dissolve, announcing the approach of return. As I was pulled back, I felt a mix of gratitude and longing. Silent goodbyes were exchanged with the souls who had shared moments of profound revelation with me. Samantha, Darius, and so many other presences, each with their own stories, seemed to whisper in unison that I should carry forward the message of redemption and hope. Suddenly, the familiar darkness took shape, and within moments, I was thrown back into my body. The scene that followed was as chaotic as the memory of the beginning. Paramedics ran, lights flashed, and the sound of electronic machines dominated the environment. I was reconnected to the physical world, where I was reportedly clinically dead for more than 5 minutes. This apparent death had turned into a rebirth, without brain damage, considered by many a miracle. As I struggled to understand each sensation, a part of me remained on the plane where I received the call. I knew, with a certainty that surpassed logic, that I now carried a greater purpose: to share the message that eternity is real, and that each choice of love and forgiveness builds our destiny. Upon returning to the physical world, something inside me had changed irreversibly. At the hospital, as the paramedics checked my vitals and the electronic monitor pulsed a calming rhythm, I felt overwhelmed by a sense of completeness. Every heartbeat, now so precious, was a reminder that life is a unique gift filled with deep meaning. Still amidst the hustle and bustle of the corridors, my mind was immersed in the lessons learned during that brief, but eternal, period in which I transitioned between earthly existence and the divine dimension. "Verity, you really came back," said Dr. Henderson, his eyes attentive as he reviewed my exams. His voice carried a mixture of relief and surprise as the results pointed to a miracle: 5 clinical minutes of no heartbeat without brain damage. "I know, doctor. I feel like I was given a second chance," I replied, still trying to understand the immensity of that experience. In the days that followed, my routine resumed its usual rhythm, but something fundamental was restructured in my way of seeing the world. Classes, previously guided exclusively by formulas and theories, began to incorporate reflections on the soul, on the inestimable value of each human being, and on the transformative power of love and forgiveness. When I returned to the classroom blackboard in an Atlanta school, I shared, even if in a subtle way, a message that transcended logic and reason. Each person was a divine spark, an opportunity to rekindle the inner light. In conversations with colleagues and students, I was often reminded that the choices we make, no matter how small they seem, have resonance in the universe. During one of these classes, while we were discussing the principles of physics and biology, a student asked me with genuine curiosity, "Professor Abernathy, how can we know that our choices really matter?" I smiled, remembering the serene voice I heard on that other plane, and replied, "Every act of kindness, every gesture of forgiveness, is like throwing a stone into a lake. The waves spread and touch many people's lives, even if you don't see the immediate impact." Outside of school, close friends and even strangers began to notice a subtle change in me. In casual encounters, I would share small snippets of my experience, never as a sermon, but as a candid account of an internal journey that transformed my worldview. During a coffee with my friend Clara, she commented, "Verity, you look different, lighter, as if it carried a secret of happiness." "Maybe it's the reminder that life is much more than numbers and data," I replied, with a smile that reflected the peace that now lived in my heart. The impact of this experience spread silently but deeply. Little by little I understood that my mission was to show that eternity is not an abstract concept, but a reality built day after day in each act of love and compassion. Each person who crossed my path carried a unique story, and even those who seemed lost or immersed in darkness had the ability to transform if touched by the light of redemption. Today, as I write these words, I feel that every challenge and every joy is part of a divine tapestry. The final message I carry is simple and powerful. Jesus' love is infinite, and our every choice can be the key to a future full of hope and transformation. Even in the face of adversity, there is always time to seek the light and connect with what really matters.